1:30. I want to go ahead and get the meeting started. Thank you for coming today. I guess this is our first meeting in 2020, right? So Happy New Year. My name is Vana Miramontes. I'm the manager for the wastewater permitting section. And so I'm here to just welcome you guys, remind you if you have questions, wait for the microphone so we can all hear your questions. And I think we're going to get started, and I will just pass the microphone to Hannah, and we will start with the discussion on the multi-sector general permit.
Do you not want to introduce us?
Oh, I'm sorry. I think we're supposed to do some introductions. How does that work?
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys just go around? Or?
Yeah, so I'll start. I'm Hannah Nielsen. I'm from the stormwater team.
I'm Sarah Johnson. I'm on the industrial wastewater team.
Brian Saran, I'm the biosolids work leader on the land application team.
Laurie Fleet, wastewater permitting section.
Caressa Browder, water quality customer information assistance team.
Sarah Bergen, Bracewell.
Lyle Tischler, Kasuri.
Asa Bigham, TCQ Enforcement.
Ted Lilly, Flat Rock Engineering and Environmental.
Michael Carolyn, City of Austin Pretreatment.
Jeff Sadis and Seals.
Janet Sims, Perkins Engineering Consultants.
Ryan Dorth, Corks Utilities, Texas.
Gloria Broussard, Corks Utilities, Texas.
Susan Meckel, Lower Colorado River Authority.
Cindy Hobson, Texas Parks and Wildlife Department Water Quality Program.
Lauren Thomas, Lloyd Goslink.
Katie Arnold, Baker Botts.
Jamie Canings with Burns McDonnell.
Trace Canings, Plumber Associates.
Gwen Frost, ConocoPhillips.
Tammy West, Austin Water.
Anna Moorhead, Pretreatment Team.
Tammy Jaraki, Pretreatment TCQ.
Maria Benitez, Pretreatment Team.
Okay, so we are going to start on the first topic that we have. That's renewal of the multi-sector general permit. And this is a stormwater permit, and it regulates stormwater discharges from industrial activities. And the general permit we have now expires August 14 of 2021, so we have started the renewal process. We started in September last year. And we had a stakeholder meeting October 18, 2019, and the webcast from the meeting and along with handouts of the proposed changes are available on our stakeholder website. We got 18, we had 18 stakeholders that provided comments to us, and we really appreciate all the comments and the interest in our renewal of the multi-sector general permit. And just a few highlights of the changes that we are proposing. The first is that we are going to add NAICS codes to our SIC code tables. We are adding some required items that we need on the NOC and the NOIs to comply with the e-reporting requirements. For example, we're going to capture industrial activities that are subject to federal categorical guidelines. Also, we are going to have delegation of signatories. They'll be filed online to the STIAS system. In Part 3 and Part 5, we made clarifications to reporting requirements. We made it clear which activities are subject to federal categorical guidelines. For example, in Sector O, that it's only facilities that have coal pile runoff that are subject to those requirements. We are requiring for consistency in the general permit that rain gates they must be located on site of the facility. For Sector J, we are adding some BMPs from the construction general permit. For example, off-site vehicle tracking of sediments, the generation of dust, dewatering of trenches and excavation, and pumping and dewatering of standing water. To Sector L, we are adding definitions for final cover and intermediate cover, and we are replacing trenches with units. Then we are adjusting 2 benchmark values, and they are based on the data we collected during our permit term. For Sector T, we are lowering BOD from 20 milligram per liter to 15 milligram per liter. Sector U, for SIC code 2074 to 2079, we are lowering the TSS from 100 milligram per liter to 50 milligram per liter. The next steps in our renewal process is going to be management briefings in April, and we're proposing to send the EPA our draft permit in April for their 90-day review. That was my updates. Any questions for this general permit?
So Hannah, do we still go to agenda for proposal or just adoption?
We just go to agenda for adoption.
Okay, thank you. No? Okay. Lori?
All right. So I have several updates. We have a new water treatment plant general permit that's being developed. It would authorize the discharge of wastewater generated as a result of conventional water treatment at water treatment facilities into or adjacent to water in the state. That draft permit was posted online for stakeholders to review and provide comment back in November and the early part of December. We did make some revisions based on some of the input that we received, and we are in the process of briefing our management on those revisions, and we expect to send that draft permit to EPA for review in March. Any questions about the water treatment plant general permit?
So would there be opportunities for further comment, or would we just come back for adoption?
You want to repeat that?
Would there be further opportunities for public input, or would it just come for adoption to the commission?
Yes, it would go for public notice, for official public notice. This was just a stakeholder input, an informal stakeholder input, giving stakeholders an opportunity to provide edits to that permit before we went to EPA. But yes, after EPA review is completed, we will go out for official public notice and comment, and any comments we receive will provide an official response to comments before adoption. Other questions? Then I'll move right along into the next general permit, which is our evaporation pond general permit. We're proposing to renew that general permit, which authorizes wastewater generated by industrial or water treatment facilities to be disposed of by evaporation from surface impoundments adjacent to water in the state. This general permit does not authorize the discharge of wastewater into water in the state. The current permit expires September 15th of this year, and we expect to publish notice of the draft permit in March of this year. That is a state-only permit. It does not require EPA review, so as soon as we get the permit finalized and brief our management, we'll be going out for public notice in March. Any questions on the evaporation pond? Question back?
Is it on? I just wanted to ask, is there going to be any more stakeholder meetings about that permit, or if not, is there an opportunity for comment for us?
We're not going through a stakeholder input on that particular general permit. We are going out for public notice, and again, that'll be official public notice and we'll be responding to any comments that we receive. So yes, there is an official public comment period. And that applies to all of our general permits. Some of our general permits, we will have a stakeholder process if we anticipate stakeholders have significant input, such as Hannah's general permit for the MSGP. Obviously, this new general permit, because we don't know what kind of stakeholder involvement we were going to have. We went ahead and just held a stakeholder, had stakeholder input. But other than the stormwater team, most of our general permits, we do not have a stakeholder input process, but every single one of our general permits does go through official public notice. They're published in the Texas Register and at least one statewide newspaper, typically the Houston Chronicle, and that begins the official public comment period. So that's kind of a standard process for our general permits. I do. Vonna was reminding me, if we're renewing a general permit, we will send notice out to all of our existing permittees to notify them that we are planning to initiate the renewal, as well as to solicit any input from our permittees. So we do that letter to them. So are any other questions on the evaporation pond general permit? Okay, then I will move on with my third one, which is the hydrostatic test general permit. We are proposing to renew and amend that general permit, which authorizes discharge of hydrostatic test water from new vessels that contain raw water, potable water, or elemental gases, or vessels which contain petroleum substances or waste related to petroleum substances. The current permit expires on April 5th of 2020, and the public comment period ended on December 3rd. And we expect to go to the commission for readoption of that general permit on March 4th. Just as an aside, that general permit does not include revisions related to oil and gas discharges. We are going to be initiating an amendment as soon as this general permit is issued. We are going to be following it very closely on its heels with an amendment. We're already starting on that process to draft that general permit amendment. So very closely on the heels of this renewal getting adopted, we'll be following that up with publication of the amendment, which does incorporate oil and gas facilities, and that's related to House Bill 2771, which was adopted this past session.
Would you seek stakeholder input at your meeting in March on 2771 on the hydrostatic, or it would just be its own separate?
It'll be its own separate permit action. So on March 4th, that's going to be adoption of the renewal, and so when we do the amendment to add the oil and gas discharges, that'll be its own separate standalone process. It'll have its own public comment period, etc. Any other questions on the hydrostatic, either the renewal or the upcoming amendment? All right, then I will turn it back over.
Thank you, Lori. Okay, Brian.
Yeah, it's an update on the sludge rules, the 312 rules. For any of you that are unfamiliar with this, the purpose of these revisions is to provide clarification, improve readability and consistency throughout the Chapter 312 rules for sludge use, disposal, and transportation. To give you some updates since the last time we met in here as a work group, we proposed the rules that they're published for comment and Texas Register on October 25th. We had a public hearing here in this room, November 19th. We did not receive any comments during the public hearing, but we did receive various comments from 4 different entities, comment letters. As of now, we're briefing management on these comments that we received and our responses to them and our adopted version of the rule. The proposed agenda date for the consideration of adoption will be on March 25th, which means the proposed adopted rules be posted on backup on March 6th. And this backup will contain both the the changes that we've made from the proposed rules over to the adopted version of the rules, along with the responses to the comments that we have received. If it's adopted by the commission, the effective date of the rule will be April 16th as of now. And that's all I have right now. Do you have any questions? Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Dr. Johnson is going to talk about the Austin Rule Petition and the 319 revisions for the analytical method update rule. Just so you guys know, we do have comments. We've received comments from the MUR stakeholder group in regards to revising the MALs and adopting information into the IPs. We're working on those comments, so Dr. Johnson's not going to address any of those particular comments at this time. We're talking about just updating the 319 rules, but I just want you guys to know, I know there's been some concern, but we will not be updating the application. We will not be moving forward with the IP's revisions until we've met and discussed the changes with our stakeholders. So just want to get that out there before Dr. Johnson gets started.
Thank you. All right, so the first rule update pertains to 30 TAC Chapter 222, Subsurface Area Drip Dispersal Systems, and Chapter 309, Domestic Wastewater Effluent Limitation and Plant Siting. These two chapters were amended to implement changes based on the petition the Commission received from the City of Austin on March 14th, 2016. Chapters 222 and 309 now give an applicant for a TLAP the option to reduce the acreage required for land application of treated domestic wastewater by obtaining a beneficial reuse credit that accounts for the effluent that is used for beneficial reuse instead of going to the land application site. The beneficial reuse credit will be based on the firm reclaimed water demand demonstrated by water use data from the applicant's reclaimed water users. The rules now establish requirements for obtaining and maintaining this credit. The revised rules in chapters 222 and 309 were effective January 9th of this year. The municipal wastewater team is currently revising their permit application to now include a new worksheet for applicants wishing to apply for a beneficial reuse credit. Are there any questions regarding chapters 309 or 222? Okay. For the chapter 319 revisions, revisions are currently in the proposal phase for 30 TAC Chapter 319, General Regulations Incorporated into Permits. The proposed rulemaking will clarify the alternate test procedure process in accordance with EPA's 2017 Methods Update Rule. Additional minor changes are going to be made throughout for clarity and readability as well. The current timeline estimates a proposal date before the commissioners on May 20th, 2020, with an estimated adoption date of October 21st, 2020. Are there any questions regarding the Chapter 319 revisions? All right, thank you.
All right, back to me. So I know since last January we've been talking about improving our permit processing timeframes, and so we've been streamlining our own internal processes. Again, I've mentioned this in the past. Our legislative performance measure is to process 90% of our permits on time. Last fiscal year, we were only able to issue 81% of those permits on time. In addition to making changes to some of our internal processes, two of the areas that we identified that the applicant/consultants would contribute to is the timely publishing of public notices and submitting the documentation to support that notice, and the timely review of draft permits. In December, we elevated that issue to our executive management, and we did get permission from them to to begin exercising our authority in 30 TAC 39.405A, which allows us to return an application for failure to complete notice within established timeframes. So with that approval from our executive management, in December we sent out, I believe, 7 letters, and they had 30 days to get all of their documentation submitted, and the deadline for them to complete that and get their NORI and NAPTI, those are the 2 notices, complete is the 23rd, so Thursday. We will be reassessing whether they completed that notice and if they still have not completed their notices, we will be returning those applications. So again, I started briefing y'all about this, last January, and so here we are after a year's worth of outreach and efforts. We have started getting a little tougher, I guess you'd say. Are there any questions about that process? And by the way, we did send out an email to the Water Quality Advisory Work Group on this issue and notified y'all that in December we were going to start exercising that option, so it should not be a surprise to anyone.
Thank you, Lori. I just wanted to point out that this, like Lori said, this is a process. We've gone up all the way up to the chairman and got approval to do this. I know in the past we've said you need to do something in 30 days. If your customers or you get these letters that say in 30 days your application will be returned, it will be returned. They will be operating without a permit. They will be under enforcement. You have to come in for a new permit, which means you're going to have a hearing request and 300 to 330 days before you get your permit. So I hope you guys can share this with your clients and your friends out there. We have got to find some processes that we can tighten up to meet our measures. And like Lori said, this is by rule that you must publish in 30 or 45 days, depending on the notice, and we will be returning applications. So I just wanted you, I know Lori says it, but I just wanted to reiterate that this is really happening. So work with us, give us a call. We'll be happy to do what we can, but people that just sit on these applications for 6 or 7 months, we can't meet our goals with that kind of lag time. So I just wanted to talk about that. Thank you.
Never hurts to repeat that because there are some huge implications if your application gets returned. And one other one I'll piggyback on there is for domestic facilities, you will be subject to new plans and specs reviews. So if you lose your authorization, you will have to go through Lewis C. Heron III. Again, nobody wants to do that. Any questions about this process? Okay. Then my final topic is implementation of House Bill 2771. This bill requires TCEQ to seek delegation authority from EPA for MPDS program to issue permits for discharges of produced water, hydrostatic test water, and gas plant effluent into water in the state resulting from certain oil and gas activities. Once EPA delegates that permitting program to us, then the bill notes that the permitting authority, the state permitting authority for those discharges would transfer from the Railroad Commission to the TCEQ. We have a separate standalone stakeholder group that we talk about the status of this implementation. It's a multi-pronged implementation, and so I won't go into a lot of detail here. If you are interested in being involved in that stakeholder group, I would recommend that you send an email to hb2771@tceq.texas.gov, and we can add you to that stakeholder group. Again, I'm just going to do high level here today. So one of the things I wanted to let y'all know about was the Chapter 305 rule revisions. So to implement House Bill 2771, we have to adopt the federal effluent limitation guidelines. And so we're revising Chapter 305 to adopt 40 CFR Part 435 and 40 CFR Part 437. Those proposed rules are currently in public notice. We are having a public meeting on February 4th in this room at 1:30. So if anybody has any comments, wants to present oral comments, they can do so. Again, that public meeting is February 4th at 1:30 here in the Commissioner's Agenda Room.
At that public meeting, will you have staff on hand before the official public meeting just to ask questions?
We typically do. When we have a public meeting, we typically have staff available about 30 minutes ahead of the meeting time for informal Q&A. If there's questions, but you don't want to go on the official record, yeah, we do that. Mm-hmm. Other questions? All right. Do we have any questions on any of our topics online? Very good.
Okay, so I hope all of you got the itinerary. We do have here a couple of stakeholder meetings that we have coming up. This Thursday, 1 to 4 o'clock in this room, we're going to have our pre-treatment stakeholder meeting. As Lori said, the upcoming HB 2771 is on March the 3rd in this room as well. And then the Surface Water Quality Standards Advisory Group, they're going to be holding a meeting in 2210 on March the 9th. They're going to looking at, I begin to start their updates. I just wanted to let you know too that the implementation procedures, the IPs, are going to be going hand in hand with the water quality standards this go round. So Greg Easley wanted me to let you guys know that he will also be there at that meeting, or some of his staff, someone will be there at the meeting to talk about the IPs as well. So do we have any questions or comments? No? Okay, well, thank you. I hope you guys have a wonderful afternoon.